Hi, I'm Justin Constantine, and this whole series is about military spouse employment. You've already heard me talk about a few things in the previous modules. Today we're talking with Chuck Sevola, who's a vice president at Prudential and the head of the veteran initiatives over there. So he's an expert on this issue, and so we're lucky to have him talk with us today. So hi, Chuck.
Hey, Justin, how are you?
Good, good. So would you mind just telling us about your military background and what you focus on at Prudential?
Sure. So I joined the military back in 1986 after I commissioned in through ROTC. I was a signal officer, and I did 4 years at Fort Carson, Colorado, as a communications officer in the 4th ID. And after I left the military, I started with Prudential and did a lot of things informally for veteran advocacy around observances for Memorial Day and Veterans Day and things of that nature. But as years went on, we added more sophistication and more to that. And it culminated in 2010 when we stood up our Office of Veterans Initiatives. So we started working, putting together a number of things that we were going to do around veteran employment, and then later military spouse employment, the topic of today's discussion.
Sure.
And then finally in 2014, a lot of the things that I had done informally for all those years became formalized, and I was asked to lead the Veterans Initiative Office. So I've been doing that ever since. I had some IT responsibilities, which was my main area of expertise when I started with the company.
Sure.
But in 2017, I branched away from my IT responsibilities, and I've been doing this full time. And been very, very happy for it, and been honored to lead the Veterans Initiative Program at Prudential.
So you started at Prudential after the military, and you've been there the whole time?
Absolutely. Been there for 29 years now. So yeah.
That's great. What's Prudential's philosophy around hiring veterans and military spouses?
Sure. So our philosophy is this. It's really two-phased. First off, it's the right thing to do. We think that as a good corporate citizen, Prudential has a role in being able to help veterans make the transition from their military service into careers after their military service, so they can help enjoy the prosperity that they help protect when they wore the cloth of our nation. So it's the right thing to do, first and foremost. But secondly, one of our key philosophies is that we shouldn't do this because it's just the right thing to do. It's important to do it because it's great business sense to do it. So we think that there is an excellent talent pool, both in veterans and now military spouses, that can be leveraged by a company like Prudential and many other companies, both large and small, to be able to help do the things that are important for that particular organization. They bring an amazing skill set to the workforce, and they're helping us accomplish our business goals. And we think it's great business to do it, and we're proud to do it.
That sounds fantastic. What initiatives have you been part of specifically related to military spouse employment?
Sure. So as I said earlier, Justin, we started out with veterans in 2010, but about 3 years later we realized, wait a minute, as the issue of military spouses became at the forefront of really the consciousness of our country, we realized that we were missing the boat on a great talent source in military spouses. Prudential is very much a believer in that talent is a differentiator in how it is that we behave as a company. And then when we saw and really understood the talent pool that military spouses represented, we started putting hiring programs in place to be able to take advantage of military spouses. So we have, through our program that we have with Workforce Opportunity Services, it's called Vet Talent, we have a program whereby we bring veterans and now military spouses in to train on specific opportunities that we have at the company. And it starts out with an education component, and then they intern with the company, and then they consult back to us from the Workforce Opportunity Services organization for a period of time where they can set their skills that they started learning in that education phase, ultimately leading to employment. We've been doing a lot of that, particularly in our El Paso office. And as such, as of today, we have about 50% of the people that we employ in El Paso are either veterans or military spouses. I think that was the start for us. The next thing that we've really started to do is that we recognize that the issues that military spouses face start with the fact that every 2 or 3 years, as we know, they move to the next duty station. And what does that mean? That means certainly the military member has an opportunity to go to the next job and get started right on the next part of their career. The military spouse is left out in the cold because they have to quit their job and move on. That's bad for the military family and the military spouse, obviously, but it's bad for the company as well because the company loses the continuity, loses the training, and has to respend the recruiting and training dollar necessary to refill that position. Prudential's role and Prudential's approach to this is job portability. We're now allowing spouses to take their job with them when they PCS, particularly from our Fort Bliss location in El Paso. When they do their PCS, we give them the opportunity to take their job with them to go to wherever it might be, Fort Bragg or Joint Base Lewis McChord,
Sure.
and continue their work for Prudential, working out of their living room. The good news is that we have 14 people today that are working completely remotely out of Prudential offices and doing the work that they started doing in their original location. We've actually expanded it now, where we've actually brought some people into the organization who haven't even started at a Prudential location. So we have 2 people that started with the company that never worked in a Prudential location. We have one that is a military spouse. They're stationed at Langley Air Force Base, and she's an attorney in our technology organization. Secondly, one of the things that we do outside of military spouse work in our organization is financial wellness education. We have a military spouse that manages that from soup to nuts,
Wow.
and she's stationed. Her husband's stationed at Fort Bragg, and he's actually on deployment. She works 100% remote, and she is doing the work of a very important initiative that we have in our VI office. So we have a number of things. We are all in with respect to spouses. Not only because it's the right thing to do, Justin,
Sure.
but because it makes great business sense for us to do it, because it's a great talent pool to accomplish the things that we need to accomplish as a company.
That's great information. I think you're part of some larger organizations or some collaboratives around veteran and military spouse employment. Is that true? Have you worked with some groups?
Yeah, so first off, we are a military spouse employment partnership member.
Okay.
So
What is that?
So the MSEP, as it's called, is basically a DoD program, Department of Defense program, whereby companies that have made a commitment to work with military spouses and meet certain criteria that they set out are designated as an MSEP partner.
Okay.
And then they have access to hiring tools and databases of military spouses and a community of military spouses who are looking for work to be able to fill those particular roles. So that's one of the organizations that we're involved in. There are a number of informal things that are taking place. So we work a lot with the Institute for Veterans and Military Families, and they have
Up in Syracuse.
up in Syracuse,
Yeah.
exactly. They have a lot of things that they're doing with military spouses, hiring our heroes, and the work that they do through their MCAC, the Military Spouse Employment Advisory Council. We're big partners in that as well, and helping to shape the future and programs that are designed to help military spouses. So we try and stay engaged in the community because we think that we've got some experience in the space, and we are, we're happy to do that. If I may, I'd like to touch on one other thing.
Sure.
So I talked about the Institute for Veterans and Military Families. Going back to the job portability, we know that it's pretty easy, relatively speaking, to allow job portability from a stateside location. So Fort Bliss to Fort Bragg as an example. When you move overseas, it becomes not easy at all. It's very difficult. So these things called status of forces agreements, which I'm sure you're aware of, Justin, from your military service. They are rules of the road, so to speak, that the host country has on the U.S. forces that says what they can and can't do. There are parts of that define what a military spouse can do from a work standpoint. And in a word, it's complex, it's onerous, it's not transparent, and it's difficult for the military spouse to navigate, and it's an obstacle to employment.
Each country's different.
And exactly.
Yeah.
There's as many SOFA agreements as there are countries that we have people stationed in. So we are working with the IVMF to do some work to understand and lift the veil of opaqueness, if I can say it that way, around what it is that the SOFA agreement is, what its requirements are, and to give them some resources on what they can do to help navigate through that so they can work remotely.
Sure.
So we want to be able to allow people to take our jobs overseas and continue the work, as I said before, to maintain that continuity. Because of the issues of SOFA, it's very difficult. We're working with the IVMF to figure that out for ourselves, and then put resources out to our other companies that may be interested to be able to use that resource to allow them to do it in their own companies as well. We're also working closely with the Hiring Our Heroes organization from the U.S. Chamber, and I sit and I chair a team for the SOFA agreements where we are working again to help understand the SOFA agreements, leverage the work that we're doing with IVMF, and then help find ways of distributing that information in a way that makes sense. One other point I'll make in terms of other organizations. There's an organization called Psych Armor Institute. We work with them in our financial wellness series, and we've done a number of videos with them. We think that there's opportunity there to put material in place it on Psych Armor, which has amazing reach. They're an amazing organization, but put material up there on military spouse employment and job portability so that we can spread far and wide the message and the processes and the pitfalls around SOFA and other things so that people can get good at allowing portability overseas.
Yeah, that's important you mentioned. First of all, we have tens of thousands of soldiers and other service members in Korea, in Germany, in Japan, so what you're talking about is a big deal. But also you mentioned the financial wellness and what you're doing on that. I think that's critical too for our service members, but the spouses. A lot of times the spouses are the ones who are managing the checkbook. We don't do a great job in the military about financial literacy.
Right.
But you guys are helping that.
Yeah, so, and thanks for bringing that up, Justin. So, for exactly the reasons that you said, there are things that that the government does for our military service member when they're in the service of their country.
Yeah.
They take care of housing, they take care of life insurance, they take care of retirement. But then when you discharge, whether you do a full retirement or if you get out after 4 years, that's all on you.
Yeah.
And many times the skills and abilities that you need to manage your financial affairs, you don't have those skills because you never had to exercise that muscle, so to speak. Prudential, as a Fortune 50 financial services firm, has something to say about that. We have a lot of skill in that space, and we are pointing that curriculum that we have already developed for our institutional clients at the military community. It's completely non-solicitous, it's completely free of charge, but it's about being able to put those tools and skills in the hands of the military families so they can manage their financial affairs. So we're really proud of that. And there's other use cases too that I think are important to point out. Many times that there are people with disabilities that have a pending disability claim that runs on, unfortunately, for a long period of time. But eventually that case gets adjudicated and there might be a back payment for a disability.
Could be significant.
And exactly. It can be tens of thousands of dollars.
Right.
And there are cases where it's hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
And when you get a check for $400,000 or $500,000, which is not unrealistic, that amount, it could be an opportunity to have a life-changing, exactly. Yeah. It could be an opportunity to have a life-changing event where you can put your path on a trajectory of financial independence and be prepared for the future. Many times, unfortunately, that turns into a new Corvette or things that are not as wise a move as it could be. That's not to suggest that you shouldn't enjoy your money,
of course,
but it is to suggest that the first thing you should do is take care of yourself and your financial future before you do that.
Set yourself up.
So we're working with a number of organizations. So we're working with the Elizabeth Dole Foundation for Caregivers. We're working with a number of the Wounded Warrior Project.
Sure.
We're working with Student Veterans of America and many other organizations, and there's others in the pipeline that we may end up working with, to help deliver both our face-to-face financial wellness curriculum as well as our digital curriculum so that it can be accessible wherever those military families may be.
Well, those are important resources for our military spouses. So financial literacy, as everyone knows, is key to success, and having Prudential provide that for free is a big opportunity. Clearly, you support hiring military spouses. You're leading from the front. What are some things you would tell other employers who haven't made that decision yet about why you would do that?
So I would tell them to fast forward the learning that Prudential had in that recognizing that this is an amazing talent pool that's out there. So if your company is differentiated by talent, and I'd be shocked if other companies aren't, recognize that the skills and abilities that military spouses bring to the fight are across the board. So I mentioned to you that I'm an IT professional. So when I headed a technology unit, my contract attorney was a military spouse, the one I mentioned to you from Langley. So there's people who have those types of backgrounds. The person that runs our financial wellness curriculum, the lady I mentioned to you from Fort Bragg, she's a project manager and does an amazing job of it and is running the day-to-day activities of that. There are as many skills and skill sets as there are military spouses that are out there, and it's a very wide and very deep talent pool. Recognize that and start weaving that into your hiring plans would be my first advice. One of the things that both you and I know, Justin, that companies will shy away from, unfortunately, is that they know that in many instances a military spouse will leave, they have to do a PCS in 2 to 3 years' time. And that will be a reason why they won't hire them. That's extremely short-sighted for a number of reasons. First off, millennial generation. What's the first thing a millennial does as soon as they get hired by the company? They start looking for their next job. So if you're worried about
2 to 3 years,
2 to 3 years, exactly. And 2 to 3 years is a pretty good deal.
Right.
So if you're worried about somebody leaving your company after 2 to 3 years, you've essentially boxed yourself out of an entire generation of talent because they're going to do that regardless. And those aren't military spouses. So I would suggest that companies warm up to the idea that job mobility and job agility is the thing of the future, and that's what's happening today.
Yep.
And then once you've crossed that threshold to recognize that that's something that's going to happen regardless if you dial into military spouses, now dial into military spouses because there's no reason to exclude them anymore. And there's never a good reason in the beginning to exclude them. But so recognize it's a great talent pool, and they are. And the other things, when you give a military spouse a job, after all the trials and tribulations that they've had in the past, think about the loyalty that you're going to have as a result of that. So you've got the skills, you've got the loyalty, and again, I know you were in for a period of time. So the PCSs that you had, and the work that it takes to move a household. So when you went to your next duty station, you started working, doing your next job. The spouse is left with having to move the home, get set up with bank accounts, get the kids in school, the child care, and the list goes on and on and on. Think about the resiliency. Think about the project management skills. Think about all the things, those skills that go along with being able to do that. Those are skills and abilities that resonate in corporate America that will make any company stronger.
Well, that's powerful. You're identifying the challenges that they face and turning around and saying this is actually a strength they bring to the workforce. Is there anything else, we talked a lot today in a short amount of time, is there anything else about military spouses, what you would tell other employers maybe, or some challenges that you've seen them overcome, or anything else that we haven't touched on today?
Yeah, I would tell you that just to reiterate that companies need to recognize that not all military spouses are home and just living at the officers club or the enlisted club at the pool and enjoying themselves. These are people who are just like you and I and everybody. Everybody wants to usually has to have a dual income, and they're in the same boat. And they are a great talent source. They're a loyal workforce. They are extremely resilient and very resourceful. They represent answers to a lot of talent questions that companies have.
Right.
And I would just suggest that companies out there recognize that what Prudential has recognized, and many other companies like Prudential, it's not just us, that they're a great talent source and that they should work hard to be able to understand it and to start leveraging it. I'm always happy, as I know you are, Justin, to work with any company who has questions about that. So by all means, feel free to reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn. And reach out, hit me up, and happy to chat with them.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Chuck.
Thank you.
So we've had here Chuck Sevola from Prudential. If you watch the other modules in this series, you've heard me talk about a lot of these same issues. Chuck here, who's heavily involved in this industry and in hiring military spouses, has reflected on a lot of those same issues. So you hear from a true expert out there. Thank you for your time. I hope you learned a lot from Chuck. And again, he's on LinkedIn, Chuck Sevola. Reach out to him if you have any questions. Thank you all.
Thank you.